First of all, I'd just like to thank you so much for being willing to do a virtual job shadow on Automotive Technician. The students will love it, and the Private Industry Council really appreciates you doing this.
Absolutely.
So I'll start just ask you a few, like, I don't know, just kind of some of your personal questions about your career. What initially interested you in this career?
It's got relatively, I guess, normal or standard hours. I don't have to deal with a lot of, super early mornings or late nights. Shifts are pretty regular. You'll usually get in that, 40, maybe a little bit longer shift some days if the days are busy, but relatively standard hours, so nothing too wild and crazy. And that was something I was looking for, just so I had some time outside of work to be able to do kind of the things I like, when I'm not working. It's one of those things that you don't necessarily need any previous training to really get into. So it wasn't something that you needed to go to school for per se. There's a lot of things that you could go to school for that would definitely be applicable, but it's not required. So it's a good entry level job.
Okay. What's your career pathway and like your education training that you received for this job?
So I guess I started out, I'm a service writer or service advisor. So I deal with a lot of the front desk kind of stuff for the service department. And I'm kind of the middleman between the mechanic and the customer. And so I guess the career path is, you end up going from just the guy that handles like the oil changes and simple stuff to handling, the bigger like engine repairs and that kind of thing. And then, service manager where you're overseeing the whole department as opposed to just kind of like your, couple techs that are assigned to you.
Okay. So on an average day, what does your work include?
A lot of communicating with customers as far as, what work we're doing in the shop, or if they need to schedule an appointment to get their vehicle looked at. Working with the mechanics to make sure that the shop is working efficiently and, they've got everything that they need to get the job done and get the cars fixed for the customer. Answering a lot of phones, that kind of stuff.
What type of challenges do you encounter at your work?
It's definitely not a boring job by any stretch of the word. There's definitely plenty of problems that come up. Some unexpected issues that, weren't always foreseen. So there's definitely always some sort of problem that needs solved. Be it, there's a certain time frame that a customer might need a vehicle done by, or if, parts aren't available, or we find an additional issue with the vehicle kind of halfway through. So there's definitely some variables there. And then just like scheduling issues. So just making sure that I have enough space in the shop that I can actually get a vehicle in and I'm not overbooked.
Okay. What part of your job motivates you the most?
Mostly just being able to help the customers. A lot of times, a lot of people that, they're just traveling through town, but they had a breakdown. So they're, it's never convenient time when you have to get your vehicle repaired usually. So there's a lot of times where people are kind of, in a rough spot and you can help them out. So that's always fun. I enjoy that.
Yeah, that's wonderful. How do you stay engaged at work?
There's definitely a lot of different things that, I guess, without really being a manager, just my position overseas. So between, communicating with, the managers within the shop or the technicians or the guys that run the parts department and talking to the customer, there's definitely plenty going on. So I'm definitely never bored.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. If you had the opportunity to start over at the beginning of your career, what would you do differently?
It's a good question. I suppose I would try to like push beyond my comfort zone a little bit. Starting a new job, it's easy to kind of find like your groove relatively quickly. So I think I would probably try to expand a little bit more than I maybe initially did.
So some company questions. What's the turnover rate at your company there?
I guess it depends on the position. Like the guys that handle like some of the more minor things like oil changes and tires and stuff like that. Sometimes they're just working, in the summer between, school years kind of thing. Or they're like just high school kids looking for an after school kind of job. So, those guys, switch around, relatively often just based off of, they're moving on to a different spot, or, they move up into a different position within the company. Which is definitely something that happens quite a bit. We do have a lot of mechanics that climb the ladder and dealing with more complicated things as they learn over time. And then you have guys that have been around for, I think we've got one of the mechanics here, I think he's been around for about 35 years. So, I mean, it's definitely not, I guess, a standard answer as far as turnaround time or turnover time, rather. I think, yeah, we've got several people that have been around for quite some time, and, we've got guys that have been here, 5, 6, 7 years or so as well. So it's a good mix of everything, really, is what I'm trying to say.
Sure. Are there training opportunities available through your company?
Yeah, absolutely. There's quite a bit available, and we get sent to different training courses. I would say, I mean, myself, I've probably done about one every 6 months. I end up, taking some sort of class, but then there's also a lot of just like online resources that you can learn, different aspects that you can better answer questions for customers is the biggest thing for me, just to be aware of. The automotive industry is always changing. But there's definitely plenty of stuff to kind of stay up to date on. So, whenever the new model comes out, or, new issues become apparent in certain vehicles, that kind of stuff, there's always something to learn from that aspect of it. But as far as like the technicians and stuff that I work with, they get sent to different training courses where they're like, a 3, 4, 5 day course where they're learning about, different issues on vehicles, and just getting a little more experience in from and being able to like really dedicatedly like focus on learning one specific topic. We have a lot of on the job training, but sometimes that's hard to really to quantify. And then it's kind of more sporadic. So it is nice to be able to send those guys to a few day course where they can just focus on learning how to be a better mechanic at the time.
How would someone learn about job availability with your company?
I used Indeed,
Okay.
the pretty popular app or website. I know that we currently have maybe a couple of job openings that are advertised on Facebook and Indeed. I don't necessarily know that we use radio or newspaper ads quite as often. I know we have used the radio ad before, but I would say the ones that just the online resources are much more common. I think when I was looking for my job originally, I think I was using Indeed and maybe Glassdoor, I think was another name of the app. So relatively common thing. So you don't have to look very hard.
Okay. Could you say what a typical salary of a position is at that company?
It depends on the position, of course. I mean, service advisor, a lot of it's commission based, just like a vehicle salesman would be. So it depends on how busy you are, that kind of thing. I would say anywhere between $35,000 to $45,000 a year, just starting out. The first year is not unreasonable to expect from a service advisor standpoint. Depends on kind of where you are, how busy you are, because it is commission, so it's a little bit of a variable there. Sometimes there's busy parts of the year versus slow parts of the year. As a technician, some of the guys are hourly, so that would just go off of the hourly issues there. I would say probably the baseline is somewhere around $12 or $13 an hour for the hourly technicians, and then some of the technicians are what's called flat rate, so it depends on how many hours of work they do for the shop. And that's how many hours that their paycheck is calculated off of. So I guess I don't have a ton of knowledge on how that all works, though.
Okay, thank you. As far as qualifications, are there qualifications that are necessary to obtain work in this career?
No, you really don't need much of a prerequisite at all. You don't need to know a lot about cars to have the job. I say it quite a bit. I tell customers like, I'm not a mechanic. I don't know all the answers, but I do know how to get a mechanic to work on your vehicle. So I don't need to have a mechanic's knowledge to do my job, which is more just customer service based. So it's a lot more a social thing than maybe like a mechanical knowledge part of that. But as a mechanic, like I said, we do a lot of on-the-job training. We do a lot of in-house training. In the automotive field, it's not uncommon to have apprenticeships either, or just kind of a mentoring kind of setup to where you might have a more junior tech who's only been with the company for a couple of years, and then you have a senior tech who's been around for 35 years and retiring in a couple of years, and just trying to train them up to pass the knowledge on before they retire, that kind of thing. So there's definitely a lot of learning opportunities, but you wouldn't have to have anything pre-hiring.
Okay, because your title is service
Advisor or service writer.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, and how about for your automotive technicians? Do they need college training?
For a lot of what we call the back shop technicians, so those are the guys that handle a little bit more serious issues. Those are the guys that do the engine repairs and a lot of the more mechanically complex things. They usually have some sort of schooling of if it's a associate's degree or it's a 2-year training course at a couple of different schools. And lots of schools offer those. They would have that, but I wouldn't say that all of them do. I know that there have been a couple of guys that have just kind of worked their way up the ladder and just learned over time while they're doing it. So it wouldn't be a requirement. It's definitely a foot up as far as where you are. As long as you work hard and do good work and learn on the job, you'll be just fine regardless.
So how important are your school grades when it comes to getting your first job?
I don't know necessarily that there's a certain minimum or standard or anything like that as far as like GPA goes. I do know that that your grades reflect quite a bit when it comes to like work ethic and attention to detail, and the ability to perform consistently. So just as one of those things where employers are really looking for those items, a higher grade or better school performance definitely would speak better to your performance as an employee, I would think. Kind of all things set aside, of course.
So the future outlook, how do you anticipate job demand for the future in the industry?
I think the demand is high right now and has been for the past few years. And I don't predict that going down at all. I think, just the few shops here in town, I think everybody's hiring and no one would turn a tech away if, it was somebody who was walking in the door and said, hey, like I want to work, I want to fix cars. I have a little bit of experience or got a little bit of training, or I just want to work. I don't think anybody's been turned down. Experienced techs are kind of a hot commodity these days. Everybody's low on the guys that have been around for a while, just because that there's been a relatively large experience break. I've got a lot of guys that have been in the business for 5 or 6 years, and then a couple of guys that have been in the business for over 20 or over 25. Not a lot of the ones in between. So there's definitely plenty of demand for experienced technicians or guys that are willing to work to get the stuff done.
Anything else you want to share? You did very awesome. Anything else you want to share with us?
Guess I'm trying to think of anything that we may or may not have covered. I think we kind of hit everything that I was expecting to talk about.
Yeah, it was very, very informative, and appreciate your time more than you know. It was very, very kind of you.
Yeah, glad to help out.
Okay, well, thank you very, very much. Have a great day.